Hi everyone, I'm not quite sure where this year has gone and how we are nearly in 2026, especially as I am here today with my final classics TBR of the year. These are all the books that I would like to have read by the time that 2026 rolls around, not including some of the festive reads that I'll talk about next month, because I am hoping that December will be a bit of a festive classics fest, which is a name I just made up, so do excuse how terrible it is. But I'm going to be very busy in the meantime because I've got a lovely stack of books that I'd like to make my way through, including authors that I've read for the first time this year and some new selections too. I'm still in the mood for cozy classics and classics that feel slightly spooky in tone. There's also another complete wild card that absolutely won't be a cozy book, but we are still in autumn here in England, and I am an autumn child. I was born in October, so this feels like my season, and I'm loving the long dark nights where I can get all snuggly and sit down with a good classic. So the book that I'm going to be starting next is Kingdoms of Elfin by Sylvia Townsend Warner, a book that has been sat on my shelf for a really long time, but if you've watched one of my recent videos you may know that I have a new all-time favourite book, Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner. I love it with my whole heart. I can't talk about it now because I'll be here for an hour, but I now want to read every single word that Sylvia Townsend Warner ever wrote. And I thought this would be a really great place to go next because it's quite atypical. It's not a novel, it's a collection of 16 short stories, fairy stories set within her fictional kingdom of Elfin that also interlaps with our own world. These stories were originally published in The New Yorker but collected together for the first time and published in 1977. I think the great thing about a collection like this is, yes, they are fantasy stories. Yes, there is lots about them that doesn't feel real, but you can also read them thinking, how does this reflect the social and political reality of when they were written? How does this reflect what was happening in people's lives at the time? Is there any crossover? Is there a parallel? And how is that fantastical world, the fantastical setting, feeding into different narratives? So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I must say, as a disclaimer, this was published by Handheld Press, Handheld Classics, and I'm not sure you can get this anymore, but I will have a look, and if you can, I'll leave a link in the description, or you might be able to get it secondhand, but the publisher don't run anymore, so I'll let you know, but it's one I feel very lucky that I picked up when I could. So this year, for the first time, I read an Iris Murdoch novel. I read The Sea, and I hated it so much that I loved it. It was one of those books that had such an unreliable narrator that made me want to scream. I couldn't stand him, and yet I was obsessed with this book. I just couldn't put it down, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. I actually did an article on it for the Classics Community Substack, which I'll link below because I enjoyed writing about it so much too, and I kind of want everybody to read it. So I thought I would read another Iris Murdoch book before the year ends, and I have gone for The Unicorn, which I have started reading already. It is very spooky. It reminds me a lot of The Sea. The Sea, for example, is kind of a major character in this book. It's set in this barren landscape, a house in the middle of nowhere, and a young woman who has been employed as a governess, she thinks, but when she turns up, she's basically tasked with teaching lessons to an older woman, not a child, who is very mysterious and Miss Havisham-like, and all the inhabitants are also very creepy, and this is one that you kind of can't read too quickly because you've got to keep putting it down and being like, oh god, what's going on? But I'm really enjoying it, and I love Iris Murdoch, and this felt like the best companion to The Sea, and so far I am being proven right. I'd love to finish this before the end of the year, just because next year I would like to read some of the other Iris Murdoch that I've got. This wasn't in the plan originally. I have got other Iris Murdoch books, but I saw this in Waterstones when I popped in one day, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I had to go back and get it because I was like, I just need to read this book. This is the next one that I'm going to read. So really enjoying it so far. I will let you know how the rest goes. I actually don't think I've talked about The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler since I read it earlier in the year. I think because it's taken me about 6 or 7 months just to get over the experience of reading it. It was super intense and I felt quite stressed for a long time after I finished reading it because I kept thinking I was in the world. This was a book that I read right at the beginning of meeting my girlfriend because she told me to read it and I wanted to impress her, and I'd had it on my TBR for ages and I didn't know when I was going to read it, but I just took a chance on it and I ended up loving it. But it was very intense and I didn't think I was ready yet to read the sequel, Parable of the Talents, but I think now is finally the time because I'd love to read more Octavia Butler, but I don't think I can before I read this. So this was originally going to be a trilogy, but she never completed the final book. So I don't know how that's going to go. I don't always love that as a reading experience, but the series is basically set in a futuristic America where climate change has wrought havoc on both the landscape and society as a whole. And our main character, Lauren Olamina, has grown up in a gated community, a very close-knit gated community with her family, but throughout the course of the first novel, that community is broken down and she has to fend for herself in the outside world where there is no social order. And this is the sequel. It picks up right where we left off. There is so much that is shocking about this series. It is very difficult to read at times, but that's what makes it so enjoyable because Octavia Butler is just the absolute best at creating a world system that makes so much sense because you can see your own society in it. I think dystopian and futuristic novels make the most sense when actually you can see how we've got to that point and how our own society mirrors what is going on in here. So it's one of those books where I'm like, I'm not looking forward to it as such. It's just something that I've got to do because I do have some more Octavia Butler that I would like to read, and I think it's time. I think it's gonna have to happen now because otherwise I'll keep putting it off. But I would highly recommend these books. Not my thing usually, but I took a chance and it paid off because I really loved the experience of reading it. It really opened my eyes and really pushed my own boundaries as a reader. So would highly recommend. I'm looking forward to reading The Parable of the Talents. We're going back in the opposite direction now, and another cozy read because I'm gonna need some coziness in here somewhere. I would like to read Miss Mole by E.H. Young. Look at this cover. This cover makes me feel warm and cozy inside. This has been compared to Lolly Willows or Elements of Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner. Everybody scream at me when I mention Lolly Willows. I'm really sorry. But also Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day, which is one of, or I think it is Persephone Books' most popular book. They republished it and I read that a few years ago now. Really loved that. And this is about our eponymous Miss Mole. She is 40 years old. She has been working in service for 20 years and she goes back to the town or the village that she grew up in. I'm really into these unlikely heroine narratives where we have somebody who isn't traditionally seen as your like perfect ideal heroine, and yet they have so much heart to them you can't help but fall in love with them and also see yourself in them. They work as sort of Cinderella narratives. There's a big transformation at the heart of this book, but it also talks in the blurb about a big secret that Miss Mole has, and it's going to be nice to read a new author for the first time too because I've never read any E.H. Young before. I'm not sure if you would count this next book as a festive read. To me, the film adaptation is a festive watch. It's something you can watch every single Christmas and it feels like a Christmas film, even though some might argue with me on that. But I'm not sure about the book, so I think I'm going to read it at the end of November instead. This is The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith, which you might know best as Carol. This was adapted into the film Carol. This is a book that has had to fly under the radar. It was originally published under a pseudonym. It's been out of print at times. It's a book that has had to live in the shadows until I think the film adaptation brought it back into the light. It's about Therese, who is a young woman working in a department store as a sales clerk, and her chance encounter with a woman called Carol, who is married, who has a child, and yet they fall in love, and part of their love story is about Carol having to choose between her family and the domestic and her love for this woman that she meets. I love the film so much and decided that I would watch that first, but I have owned this for years and have never read it, so I really do think that now has got to be the time, because I watched the film last year, so I do think it would be nice to read it this year. And then finally, a mini collection of short stories, and this year I have enjoyed dipping in and out of the Penguin Moderns. These were published a few years ago and are really accessible collections of modern classics that have really inspired me to reach for authors that I might not otherwise have done. So I read Notes on Camp by Susan Sontag earlier in the year. I refer to it all the time, which is kind of boring because I just can't keep referring to everything as camp and then be like, oh, but Susan Sontag would have thought it was camp. She lays it out in Notes on Camp. I probably am insufferable when I talk like that, but I decided I would read The Custard Heart by Dorothy Parker. I don't know anything really about Dorothy Parker, but I've seen her around. I thought, well, maybe I need to read some of her writing. I don't know what to think, just not sure what to expect whatsoever, but this is described as wisecracking and heartbreaking. These tales of women on the edge by the legendary wit Dorothy Parker show the darkness beneath the surface of the Jazz Age. I'd love to read more Jazz Age books too. I've read The Great Gatsby, of course, but I'd like to know a female take on the Jazz Age, and this just seemed like it would be a great read. So that was my end of year classics TBR. Very excited to get underway with all of these books. A lovely mixture of short stories, novels, and some return authors, but a new to me author too. So I'm really looking forward to it. Do let me know in the comments what you are hoping to read by the end of the year, and I will let you know as soon as I have read this selection of books. I can't wait to talk about them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Happy reading!